What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Awesemo.com strategy show, NBA edition, sponsored by Josh.
It's up to you today, man. Who do you want to give a read for?
I think we're going to go with our actual sponsor for this one.
Draft Day.
That would
Got
be
it. Got it. Nailed it.
Frafty. Remember, there was actually a site called Frafty back in the day.
That one that might even be before my time.
They lasted for maybe 3 months. There was Fan Throwdown was another one.
Yeah, they got it
with that back in the Condia days. This one, presented by a real site, No House Advantage. I'm Dave Loughran on Twitter at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D, and with me back-to-back days here, Josh Engleman at Josh Engleman on the Twitters. What's going on, brother?
Not too much, man. Feeling pretty good. Getting back into it here. Good slate, 9 games. Oklahoma City looking ridiculous once again. Chicago looking ridiculous once again. We're gonna have a hell of a slate today.
Yeah, we are. And if we learned anything yesterday and really over the past month, the Brooklyn Nets, man, they are bad defensively. It's getting out of control.
You mean to tell me that DeAndre Jordan can't anchor an NBA defense any longer? I am shocked.
That's exactly what I'm telling you. They gave up, I think it was 55 points through the first 3 minutes of the second quarter. And this team had given up 55 points to the Detroit Pistons, right? This was not a good basketball team they were facing. DeLon Wright and Jeremy Grant looked like all-stars once again. And now we got them again today against Indy. And it's interesting. They were that opened to 2-point favorites, man. Brooklyn at home, only 2-point favorites. I think that says a lot about how many points they've been allowing.
I think it says a lot about how good Kevin Durant is too.
Sure. Oh yeah, no question. But when you have Kyrie Irving and James Harden, you should, if your defense was even remotely decent. But I guess that
where could they have found a better defensive center? I wonder. Maybe they can get someone like Jared Allen.
I said the same thing last night.
Dopes.
I said the same thing last night. Yep. Not great. But we're going to talk about all of it, and we're happy to have you guys with us. We got 9 games today we're going to touch on over the next hour. So sit back, relax, pour that cup of coffee, whatever you need to do. I grabbed one of these today. I was running around, bad decision, falling back into old habits. Haven't had one of these in a while, man. I feel like it's burning my stomach apart.
I actually had one like last weekend. I never have a Red Bull, but I went to Home Depot to buy a space heater. Yeah. I was checking out and I was like, oh, Red Bull. I need something to give me wings today.
The Home Depot checkout gets me every time, whether it's a candy bar, maybe some M&Ms, maybe a Gatorade.
Beef jerky. I also got pizza flavored combos. So that happened.
I can enjoy the combos, but the buffalo blue cheese are like hands down the best ones.
Pretzel pizza is also fantastic. They need to be fresh though. This particular pack of combos, I think, had spent some time in that Lowe's. So a lot of the moisture had come out of the cheese pizza paste that goes inside of it.
So the texture just got real awkward once you got through that pretzel casing.
Well, it was normally it's like dry into kind of moist. Shout out to everybody that hates the word moist. But this one was just dry to dry. So it just tasted like pizza powder, which, I'll eat anything that tastes like pizza.
Yeah, it's fair. Except pizza from bad pizza places.
I made 5 pizzas yesterday for National Pizza Day. So I'll eat that pizza.
How many did you eat?
Probably like 2.5.
No, you didn't. Like actual regular size pizzas?
Yes, 5 deep dish. No, that's like a 12-inch Neapolitan style. So they're thin, pretty thin crust.
Oh, you ate 2.5 of those?
I would say so. That sounds about right to me. I mean, I made 5. My wife tapped out after the 4th one. We had another 5, a buddy here as well. But we ate like all but 3 or 4 of the slices.
Do you have a pizza oven or something? Like, what's going on in that kitchen?
I have a pizza oven.
Do you really?
Yeah, I got one for Christmas.
What? That's awesome. Brick.
By the way, if you have any interest in doing that, they're sick. You should really get one.
Is you got a brick oven?
No, uni. So it's you hook it up. In this particular one, you hook it up to I didn't go for like wood or coal or anything. I went for the propane fired. It's a little bit easier.
I like it. I saw a Buffalo Bills fan that makes them out of an old filing cabinet, and people absolutely love it. Tailgating.
Well, Seems about right. You could have just told me the story about how he's making him in a filing cabinet and been like, what sports team do you think he likes? And I'd be like, oh, it's the Bills for sure. Does he dive through it while it's on fire?
You would have said Philly. Let's talk from basketball, or from pizza to basketball. We've got the Toronto Raptors and the Washington. I was watching a video yesterday where they were still the Washington Bullets. Brought back some good memories. Not the case anymore, though. Washington Wizards, first game on the docket today. Matter of fact, for a 9-gamer, it's the only game that's tipping off at 7 p.m. 232.5 total, Josh. We should see a good amount of scoring here. Toronto Raptors 5.5-point favorites. OG Anunoby questionable to return in this one. What are we doing with Toronto?
Depends on who we're looking at. So right now, no one on FanDuel is in double digits in ownership, and only Kyle Lowry is on DraftKings. They're not looking like all that great a place, but I really like Chris Boucher on FanDuel at 6K. Minutes are all over the place. Really difficult to figure out if he's going to play 20 minutes or 30 minutes in a given day. But to play Washington, this team is not good defensively. They play at a really fast pace, and I think that kind of fits Chris Boucher's style. If this is going to be up and down, I'd rather see Chris Boucher out there than Aaron Baines. So I gave him 26 minutes, and at that point, I think he's a really nice value at power forward. Somebody that I'm looking to be significantly over the field for, at least on FanDuel, and even on DraftKings at 5,900. He's my first guy. And then if you want to grab Lowry or Van Vliet, I think it's fine, but nobody's standing out as like ultimately awesome plays.
Yeah, the Wizards are making for a really good matchup recently. Over the last month, they're top 4 in pace, bottom 4 in defense. So, when you're looking at those type of numbers, they just don't have any real rim protection either. There's a lot that doesn't work with this Washington team. Defense, namely. Chris Boucher is an interesting one, though, because if this guy were to be getting the minutes, you're looking at someone that at 5,900, we're essentially playing every single day. Like if Chris Boucher is playing 29 or 29 to 33 minutes, or even the 27 that we saw on the 5th against Brooklyn, how often are you playing him at 5,900 on DraftKings against Washington?
All the time. Right. I have him showing up in the optimal right now on DraftKings 15% of the time. He's got 4.3% ownership. He's one of my favorite plays right now from a GPP perspective. And he's the type of guy that I want. He's a very high fantasy point per minute guy, the highest on the team by far. He's 1.22 baseline in my model. That's the kind of guy I want to take in a situation at low ownership where there's minutes variability. Because if he happens to get extra minutes, I mean, he can hang 45, 50, no problem, just because of the style of play in this particular matchup. Now, if the minutes don't get there, let's say that you expect him to play 26, but he only plays 20. He's not a 0.7 guy. He's a 1.2 guy. He could have a bad day from a minutes perspective and still get you to functional from a fantasy point perspective if he doesn't get the minutes. So it's the perfect combination of everything for Boucher today. I assume his ownership comes up a little bit, or maybe we see a little bit more news, but whether OG is in or not, I'm in for Boucher.
But you're kind of right about something. The unpredictability or the volatility in his minutes makes him a better tournament play, because if Boucher's getting 29 to 31 minutes routinely, he's going to be a top 5 owned player every night at this price point.
Yeah, he would be, if you knew that Chris Boucher was going to play 28 minutes today, he would be one of the highest owned players on the slate.
You'd be locking him in, yeah. And we got a super chat from our boy Anthony Davis, always supporting the show. Appreciate you, man. Not lost on me. He says, hey, yo, showing the love. Josh, that process show, though. Love it. I want to be like when I grow up. I'm assuming he meant to say Laffy.
Well played, dude. Well played. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I'm really enjoying doing the show.
Yeah, that's awesome. Get some good reviews for sure. It's a fun idea for sure. It really is, because I think a lot of people ask what's going on behind the scenes, and of course, a whole lot more goes into the process than you can explain to anyone. Like, there's even a lot that you explained to me where half of it was like, you know what? Okay, I don't. That's over my head. Just from the Excel standpoint, some of the. Yeah. But it definitely helps people understand exactly what you're doing and how you're getting to where you are, which I think is pretty cool. Which, by the way, Cole Anthony getting hurt yesterday pretty much sucked.
Not great. Not great at all.
What are your thoughts on Washington here? They're 5.5-point dogs. We should see a relatively competitive game here. And even if we don't, it's not going to keep us from, blowout concerns are not going to keep us from rostering players. But the reason I ask, or the reason I say that, is because Russell Westbrook on DraftKings is down to 8,400. Bradley Beal's at 9,300. We've been seeing Nikola Vucevic yesterday, another 60 banger or around that with at 8,900. What price does Westbrook need to get to where you're saying he's just too cheap?
So he's there now, but it depends on which site we're talking about. On FanDuel, I think Washington sucks. They're my least favorite team on the slate. Beal is 10-6, Westbrook's 9,700, and no one else on Washington looks good. Bertans is at 11% ownership. I don't agree with that at all. I am more likely to have nothing from Washington. If you want to get Bradley Beal as a pay up to be contrarian option on FanDuel, I think that's okay. But the value is really on DraftKings. Although Beal at 9,300 is only projected for 6% ownership. I think that's crazy. I'd rather have double that at least. It's Bradley Beal at 9,300. I don't care that Russell Westbrook is back. And then Westbrook is 8,400. That price doesn't make any sense to me, but he's already projected for 25% ownership. I don't think that you're squeezing enough value there. If you want to play Westbrook in cash, I think that's probably a no-brainer option right now. I think he's kind of a bad play in GPPs given that ownership.
Yeah. 24%, 25%, top 5 owned player right now. The thing is, can Toronto protect the rim? Can they make it so Westbrook has trouble getting to the basket? Because since he returned, and Adam and I talked about this since the beginning of the year, early on he just wasn't driving to the rim, and that kills his productivity, because the last thing you want is Westbrook taking 16 footers, right? It's like literally the last thing you want. I'd rather him take threes, because at least if he hits one, you're getting 3 points or 3.5 points on DraftKings out of it. Can he get to the rim against this Toronto team?
Probably. The question is that a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, Chris Boucher blocks shots like it's nobody's business. That could play right into his hands, or it could put Chris Boucher into foul trouble pretty quickly. I would hope that Aaron Baines is the guy that picks up the fouls, and then we just get more Chris Boucher in the spot. The minutes are also kind of interesting for Russell Westbrook. I don't really know how to look into that. Obviously didn't play on the 8th, played 28 minutes in the game before that, 25 the game before that, didn't play. Then he was back up into the 30s. So that is the only thing that's really giving me pause right now. But at his price on DraftKings, I don't think it really matters how he's playing. I think he's just too cheap.
I'm going to tell you my biggest, I'm with you, by the way, but I want to tell you real quickly my biggest concern with Westbrook, something that I've talked about throughout the year, hoping that it would change. Okay. Last year, 41.5% of his shots came from within 3 feet of the rim. This is why I bring this up. The year before that, 36%, 38% before that. Okay. You're talking about a guy that gets to the rim nearly 40% or more of his shots every single year at the rim. This year, 17% of his shots are coming within 3 feet of the basket. That's concerning to me when you're dealing with a guy that can't actually shoot.
Yeah, that's...
But he's still too cheap. I'm just saying.
I bet they didn't think that was going to happen when they shipped John Wall out.
Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, cool. He's cooked. Great. So,
I don't know. It's just something that I've been trying to pay close attention to, because with Westbrook, you need something. You need him being aggressive,
He has to, if he doesn't get to the rim, he's bad.
Exactly right. Yes.
He's actually bad. He should not, he's barely an NBA player if he can't get to the rim. Yeah. He's not bringing anything. He's one of the worst defensive point guards in the league. He cannot shoot whatsoever. What do you want Russell Westbrook on the floor for if he can't get to the rim?
Exactly. Dude, he's shooting like 29% from mid-range this year. And then he's shooting 60% from within 3 feet of the basket throughout his career. That's what you want. Yes. Do you have anything else for Washington or Toronto?
No, I think Washington looks downright terrible today.
Okay. Except Westbrook on DraftKings.
Correct. Well, aside from Beal and Westbrook.
What about Beal?
Right? Beal looks
fine.
Good because he's at low ownership to me.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by that until I saw how many high-priced players there are, and then it makes a little bit more sense that you might not be jamming Beal in over them. But 9,300 against Toronto, high total north of 230. I can get down with that one. So let's go to Atlanta and Dallas. You've got the Atlanta Hawks 4-point dogs on the road, 232 total here. So we got a lot of high total games today. No real injury news on the Atlanta Hawks side outside of the guys that we already knew were going to be sidelined. And I guess if you want to throw Rajon Rondo into the mix, he's out as well. Do you like anybody against Dallas?
It's a weird team. I do, though. I like Atlanta quite a bit. We've got Kevin Huerter, 29% owned on FanDuel. John Collins at 14% ownership on FanDuel. Both of those guys in double digits. No one else in double digits. Then Kevin Huerter at 9.5% on DK. No one in double digits at all. I have these guys as significantly better plays than the ownership is showing. Trae Young shows up in the optimal for me 12% of the time on FanDuel. A similar amount on DraftKings. He's like 2% owned. Load up on Trae Young. Clint Capella, 8,300 and 8,600 on FanDuel and DraftKings respectively. Projected for 1% ownership. If that holds, I think it should be more like 10. Grab a bunch of Clint Capella. I agree with the John Collins ownership. Kevin Huerter is in my contenders. I agree with that ownership. Cam Reddish is 4,400 on FanDuel and 4,800 on DraftKings at minimal ownership. These are a lot of guys that I want 2, 3, 4x the field because their ownership is in the 2 to 5% range. I think Atlanta is pretty sneaky today against Dallas.
This Dallas defense too is really rough, Josh. Like they have been really, really bad lately. You want to pull it from the last month, they're bottom 3. I mean, they're hanging out in the same range as the Kings and the Wizards. They're sandwiched in between both of them. They play at a relatively fast pace. Their offense just hasn't been the same. I mean, last year, correct me if I'm wrong, but they had an historically good offense by offensive rating metrics. So
they were the greatest offense in the history of basketball last season.
Isn't that crazy? And this year, now I don't think anyone's surprised to see a little bit of regression there, but they've come back down to earth for sure. I'm with you on the Atlanta Hawks, and I think ownership plays a pretty significant role in this too. You know, a high total, no real ownership whatsoever. I mean, I know you focus a lot on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, there isn't a single guy projected for more than 9%. And outside of Kevin Huerter, nobody is projected for more than 4% on this slate. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I have all of those guys, Young, Capella, Collins, Huerter, and Reddish, all as green numbers on my sheet, which corresponds to them being under-owned. I like getting to – I don't think that anybody is looking like a true smash play from Atlanta, but I think that they are wildly under-owned. I would increase Atlanta as filler for me today.
I think Trae Young should probably be around maybe 93, 95, 100 on DraftKings, but I know he hasn't been ripping off those monster games, but Trae Young, the upside is here tonight, Josh. There's no doubt he could go easy 60 plus. And our boy Anker in chat mentioned that there's a lot of guys that could go 60 plus tonight. There are a ton of really high ceiling players, but I'm always intrigued by Trae Young in these matchups against a bad defense with a high total when he's getting he's getting no ownership whatsoever. So none. I like it. I was trying to see where he sat in the boom bust tool. His boom rating so it's not very high. Bust rating is pretty high as well. And I guess that's one of the reasons he's not getting a lot of ownership. On the other side, Luka's got the 6th highest boom rating. You can check all this out at awesemo.com if you haven't done so yet. awesemo.com/join, by the way. And we do free content all the time. So if you're not a premium sub yet, be sure to tune into the shows to figure out what's free. Today, the NBA player projections, the golf ownership projections, and the NHL player projections are all free. What are we doing with Luka?
Playing him, I guess, but it's not all that interesting. He's projected for 21% ownership on FanDuel, 14 on DK. I agree with those numbers perfectly. Like it's spot on. Maxey's at 15% ownership on FanDuel. That I don't want. He's 4K today, but relatively indifferent. And then the rest of this team is sort of just properly owned. Everybody's in the 8% range, and that's exactly where I think they should be. So I don't have too much of a lean on anybody coming out of Dallas. Luka is the only guy you should be playing with any sort of volume.
On the whole team, huh?
Yeah, it's really not all that appealing. Like Porzingis is 7% owned on FanDuel at 8,700. That's where I have him. Josh Richardson is at 5. I think it should be 7. Like that's not a spot where I'm going crazy for leverage or anything along those lines. So, I mean, maybe Jay Rich on DK at 5,200, but that ownership's already there. Porzingis is 8,600 on DraftKings. I think that ownership is fine at 2%, but it's really just Luka to me.
All right, then if we move to Indy and Brooklyn, gets a little bit interesting here because Kevin Durant is still out of this one. The Pacers, 2.5-point dogs. Excuse me. Again, 234 total. This is going to happen. Anytime you face Brooklyn, you're going to have a monster total. I can't remember the last Brooklyn game that didn't have a total north of 230. Many of them above 240. We can start it off with Indy, though, because they're a pretty decent basketball team. I don't think there's anything about them that leads you to believe that they're, a competitor long-term, but they're going to keep it. There's no reason to believe they don't keep this game close. And the prices are reasonable, Josh. Like Malcolm Brogdon and Domantas Sabonis are both getting decent ownership for good reason. Even Miles Turner pulling a little bit of ownership. When you're facing Brooklyn, there are going to be some plays that really pop off. And we continue to see that night in and night out. As last night, Jeremy Grant went off, had 17 actual points in the first quarter. And DeLon Wright also had himself a game alongside him.
For me, I've got 3 guys that I want a lot of today.
Yep.
Some of these guys are already getting the ownership, so that's fine. I'm still going to get there. Malcolm Brogdon, 7,200 on FanDuel, 7,400 on DraftKings. Looks great. Projected for 20% ownership plus on both sites. I completely agree with it. This is a fantastic spot, pace up spot, terrible defense, no defensive backcourt talent to speak of, whether it's Irving or Harden. So Brogdon, very obviously a no-brainer. Sabonis, 9,300 on FanDuel, 8,600 on DraftKings. I have him around 15% odds of being in the optimal across both sites. Ownership is in that 15 to 20% range. So he's another guy that I'm going to have quite a bit of. And then Miles Turner, this one's really crazy to me. 60. Let me actually, before I go any further, let me just look at Miles Turner's minutes and make sure I'm not going to lose my mind here. Okay, down a little bit, but I still think he's going to be trying. They're going to be trying to play him a bunch. Miles Turner is 6,800 on FanDuel. He's 6K on DraftKings. He's got 2.7% ownership on FanDuel and 10 on DK. I mean, we're talking about a guy that's probably projected for like 3.5 blocks. I want to get a lot of Miles Turner at that low ownership. I think he's more free. Like 3% ownership on FanDuel is a no-brainer to me. I'm just going to have many multiples there and hope for the best against Brooklyn. DeAndre Jordan is not going out to the 3-point line to try to guard Miles Turner. That's just simply not going to happen. I assume that Jordan will be on Sabonis. One of Sabonis or Turner, I think, like truly breaks this game. I'm just going to have enough of both to try to hedge my bets. It could also be both of them.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you here. By the way, one of those games was a 20-point blowout loss where he saw his minutes curtailed, and then he had 5 fouls in the other one. I wanted to see, so he had 3 fouls in his second rotation in the second quarter, comes back out, picks up another 2 fouls, Josh, 5 minutes into the third. So there was still a lot of game left. He didn't return until 1:22 left in the last quarter and missed a significant part of that first and second rotation. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him get back up into 30 minutes again today. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
No, not at all. Those are the 3 guys that I like the most. I don't have much interest in anything else from Indiana. Either prices are too high or there's just not really enough value to speak of.
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to see if there was anything to that because I think you can still give him around 30 minutes here.
I had him. I think I had him a little bit too high, but I don't think it's going to matter. I still have him at 31 minutes.
31. Okay. Yeah. 30, 31. That sounds about right to me. But on a per minute basis, Miles Turner is giving you solid numbers, and so is Malcolm Brogdon. Obviously, so is Domantas Sabonis. Just when you look at the assist rate, the usage rate, the rebound rate, everything from Domantas Sabonis is elite right now for a player of his in the front court, a big man being able to put all of those tools together and become a legitimate triple-double threat. You don't get that very often with very many players. But, Miles Turner this season is averaging his second best per minute totals of his year or per minute average of his career. So I'm with you there. And I actually think he's underpriced.
So do I. By a lot. With 6K on FanDuel, I mean, he can pay that off in blocks.
Yeah, for sure. These guys deserve a little bit of ownership. I would not have been surprised if they were all higher projected on than they are. So we're on the same page there. What about Brooklyn? Nice. They're not going to have Kevin Durant. Kyrie Irving is 9,100 on DraftKings. His price actually came down since yesterday. James Harden's price has come down $500 actually. He played 39 minutes. He's going to get a lot of run. And we keep saying this. You said it yesterday. We had this conversation. The usage has not been there. He only attempted 14 shots in 39 minutes. He did get to the line 7 times. That contributes to usage as well. But he had another 60-plus fantasy point game because he had 7 stocks, which you cannot rely on. He's not going to do 5 blocks every game and 2 steals. No. And he had another double-digit assist game with 6 rebounds. So he is racking them up. But I don't know, man. That usage is weird.
Let's have a conversation right now. We have him projected for 35% ownership on FanDuel at 10,600. I don't conceivably know how anyone can get to that. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know how you would have to project James Harden for him to be a 35% owned guy today, because he has not done that at all in Brooklyn. He's not even remotely close to it. You would have to give him rates that look like when everybody else was off the floor for him to get to that ownership number. Like I gave him like 27, 28% usage. I've bumped his assist rate. I don't understand the appeal. James Harden at 35% ownership on FanDuel, regardless of what happens tonight, is the worst play on FanDuel in the slate if you're playing a GPP.
One might say it's preposterous.
I can't even figure out how it's happening. People you just have to assume that James Harden is not like he's going to play with a usage rate 10 percentage points higher than it currently is. That's insane to me.
I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Like you have to be assuming that his usage is considerably higher. So
like, how do you play him over Bradley Beal today, given their ownerships right now? And are they really that different of players today? Given
the difference in price, and the matchups aren't all that different. Both high total games. Right, what because
about, Zach LaVine's 9,300. Is he that different than James Harden as when James Harden is masquerading as not James Harden?
Right now, no. Right, in this current iteration of James Harden, no. You're right. I think Harden's going to give you. I think Harden has a higher floor because of just his overall ability to rack up insane peripherals. But no, I don't think you're wrong here. And in the boom bust tool, you gotta scroll to find Harden. No, I'm sorry. You don't. I was on the bust. Wow. Okay. So Alex has him as the second highest boom rating on the entire slate.
Alex has James Harden projected for 8 more fantasy points than I do.
Okay. So
I don't know what to do with that information.
So I suppose this is all coming down to projected usage. Has to be, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming you're still giving him a lot of minutes.
37.
Right. You start giving him more than that, it gets a bit dicey. So we'll see. Essentially, this seems like it could be pretty pivotal in deciding how tonight goes. But on the same page, again, you have so many other high-priced options that are in really good spots as well, that if you don't like Harden, you can just pivot off to guys that are less expensive or in the same ballpark and probably be okay.
Harden with just Durant out, 1.4 fantasy points per minute, 26% usage. How do you get to? I just don't know what else I can do. I've got him projected for 1.33 fantasy points per minute in this game.
What are you doing with Irving and the rest of this cast of characters in Brooklyn?
Basically playing nobody. Like, I think Kyrie is properly owned at 8%. So he's a guy that I would like to have about 8% of on FanDuel. I think he's over-owned on DraftKings at 9,100. And I think DeAndre Jordan for 4,500 is properly owned at 8%. The only guy that I think is actually like an okay play is Harden on FanDuel, but not at 35% ownership. I have him as an 11% guy. Even if we want to treat it like, obviously everybody should defer to Alex over me because he's a millionaire from this and I am not. However, even if you just wanted to say we're going to split the difference between these two projections, he's not a 35% owned shooting guard. You should still be coming in under that mark.
Anything else from this team? I think that's it, right? I guess the only other thing I would ask is when you've got Kyrie Irving without Kevin Durant, there are some interesting wrinkles in his game that make him at least somewhat appealing. But the problem is, how are you getting to him over Bradley Beal would probably be the biggest question. And the answer probably you're not.
Just as like a 1-to-1 pivot right there. They're both the exact same price. But, you've got Luka Doncic and Trae Young both north of 10K. LeBron north of 10K, probably without Anthony Davis. We'll see. Giannis over 10K. Nikola Jokic over 10K. Should James Harden be like the most owned guy out of all of that group? That seems insane.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I really don't. Could this game absolutely go nuts? Yes. That happens with a lot of Brooklyn games, and that'll help. And they're going to play a lot of possessions. It's going to be fast paced. They're going to need to score because their defense is going to cough up so many points. So there's a lot that goes into it for sure, but there's also a lot of other great plays in similar conditions. So let's talk about Charlotte and Memphis. The Charlotte Hornets on the road against the Grizzlies, coming in at 4-point dogs, 223.5 point total here. No Devontae Graham for the Hornets, no D'Anthony Melton, no Brandon Clark for Memphis. Thoughts on Charlotte?
I like him quite a bit. I've been pretty heavy on LaMelo Ball over these past couple games. No reason to stop now, at least on FanDuel. They have 4 guys on FanDuel in the 10 to 18% range in ownership. I agree with LaMelo's ownership. I like Gordon Hayward more than he's currently owned. I'm pretty heavy on PJ Washington. I'm looking for him to knock a little bit of the rust off. I'm happy to get to Terry Rozier. I think all 4 of those guys are key pieces of everything that I'll be doing today. I really like getting to Charlotte. I don't really mind Memphis at all. Those 4 main guys from the Hornets look good. Cody Zeller is at 13% ownership on FanDuel. That's not really something that I'm looking for a lot in comparison to the ownership. I think you can get different there. But for the other guys, Ball, Hayward, Washington, Rozier, these are all 15 to 25% owned guys for me.
Okay. So Josh Baker says this dude Engleman makes or breaks his lineups by ownership projections.
Yeah.
Well, for tournaments, yes. Like you're using ownership as one of your top guides in deciding what you're. By the way, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean for anyone that's unfamiliar, it doesn't mean that you're trying to get in a lineup. You see this all the time where people be like, well, how's this lineup look? And Josh, they've got 8 guys sub 5% owned. Like you don't need to do that. And you all the time are going to say, we all do, okay, this guy's really high owned, but I don't care. I really like him anyway. He deserves this price point. But what you're using is you're taking projections, you're taking ownership. And if you see a discrepancy there where one guy just seems higher owned than he should be based on projections, then it's going to guide your decision pretty considerably.
Yeah, if you're highly owned and I think you should be highly owned, then I still play you a lot. If you're highly owned and I don't think that you should be highly owned, I'm not going to also still play you a lot.
Right.
By the way, not the only guy doing this. The top of the leaderboards are all doing the exact same thing, just FYI.
Yeah, like Alex, number 1 ranked player, Awesemo, he's doing that. They're his ownership projections.
Yeah, I'm sure Alex ignores his own content.
Yeah, that's why you have the boom bust tool. That's why you have ownership, because in just such a highly competitive game that DFS is now, you need every edge you can get. And being able to be underweight on someone that is super popular, maybe for the wrong reasons, or overweight on someone that isn't popular is what helps you win or lose tournaments.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing with Memphis?
I don't know, avoiding them like I do every other day. We've got Ja Morant at 11% ownership on FanDuel. I was going to say he's the only guy in double digits, but that's not true because Dylan Brooks is at 20. Kyle Anderson is at 12 on DK, the only other guy north of that. I only have Ja Morant optimal odds north of 10% on FanDuel. Everybody else is sub that. So a little bit of Ja Morant and probably nothing else from Memphis. Charlotte Memphis is just normally not a fun DFS game. I thought there would be more value coming out of Memphis, but I just don't really see it for today. This is probably a spot where I'm going to be a little bit lighter. Probably my biggest disparity between current ownership and sim odds.
Yeah, I was going to say Dylan Brooks getting a little bit of ownership on FanDuel. Kyle Anderson, it seems like every game gets in that 10 to 13% range on DraftKings, Josh, because he hovers in that mid 5K range. He plays 30 plus minutes. He's been on a per minute basis, believe it or not, north of 1, which is solid. But he's also, you have to think one of the as far as range of outcomes goes, you kind of know what you're getting from Kyle Anderson, and he doesn't have a particularly high ceiling at all.
No, and you need guys like Ja Morant to be off the floor, the other high usage guys, where then Kyle Anderson gets big bumps. When he can just settle into being like the 3rd or 4th guy, he can be a ghost out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Clippers, Minnesota, LA Clippers on the road, 10.5 point favorites, 222.5 total. I've got to tell you, I've unfortunately watched a decent amount of this Minnesota team lately. Just because watching basketball is usually fun. They are really bad. I mean, They are really, really bad. And it feels like they'd be hard pressed to even stay competitive in most of these games. I know recently they've kept a couple games close, but they're losing all of them, Josh. I mean, all of them. I'm looking at their last 9. Loss, 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 win, loss, win, loss. They're just really, really rough. And they won't have Karl Anthony Towns again. They might not have D'Angelo Russell. I don't even know if it matters, honestly. Malik Beasley's headed off to a workhouse at the end of this year. I mean, things are not looking up in Minnesota right now.
Now, Beasley's been good. D'Angelo Russell's been terrible, but no surprise there. I've been beating that drum for years. People just need to listen to me. They should have hired me as the Minnesota GM. they'd be much better off at this point.
Beasley's instant offense. He's a good scorer, man. I mean, I got nothing against Malik Beasley. I don't know how much I love his price point, though.
Or his personal choices.
Well, yes, of course.
So
by the way, what's a workhouse? Like, is this because he's getting work release and all?
No.
Like, they said he was sentenced to 120 days in the something workhouse, I think it was. Like, is he going to be actually confined in there for 4 months? Or is this just going to be like, okay, show up and work in the morning, and this is your punishment? We're just saying it's 120 days to make it seem like an actual sentence.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that he's not confined.
I'm thinking the same thing. Don't you love, though, that they're like, all right, pal, wait till the season's over. You know, yeah. We're going to let you play this one out.
Insane that is like stuff that happens.
It's crazy. The Atlantean, that is a low blow, man. Says Josh, good call on Lonnie Walker. We got word an hour before lock that he was coming off the bench and limited, and his minutes were going to be limited. What do you expect?
Yeah, spoiler alert. I didn't like him as much after that.
Yeah, like that. Of course not. He should have bumped him down considerably.
Yeah, he becomes not a play at that point in time. Just so you guys know, whatever I say at 10 o'clock is usually meaningless by 6 o'clock because 600 other things have changed.
Yeah, if news changes and big news like, hey, this guy's not going to play a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm more than willing. I'm open to criticism. We all are. Like, you know, losses happen a lot in DFS. But that one, I mean, that's just a low blow, Josh.
It's just silly. It's so silly. Of course he didn't look good. It took 8 minutes off of Lonnie Walker's projection. He goes from a guy that I like a lot to a guy that wouldn't be in a single lineup.
Yep. What are you doing with the Clippers?
Playing Kawhi and Nick Batum, unfortunately.
Paul George out, by the way. Patrick Beverley questionable.
Yeah, and I put Beverley in. I don't think that's all that interesting. We need to have a little bit of a conversation about Nick Batum, though, I think. So I've got Kawhi as, you know, a good play. He's showing up in the optimal like 15% of the time. Owned a little bit more, but I think that's different on studs. So happy to go that direction. Nick Batum's 5,100 on FanDuel. He's 5,200 on DraftKings. And those prices seem fine for Nick Batum. I mean, he's bouncing between playing 30-something minutes and high 20s. If he plays in the mid-30s like he has been, he's at 1.5% ownership on FanDuel and 3.7 on DraftKings. At 35 minutes, I want significantly more than that. I'm not entirely sure I understand. Like, it's got to be a minutes thing. So what do you see in Nick Batum's minutes? What would you be comfortable projecting him for?
Well, first of all, he's played 269 minutes with Paul George off the floor this year. 0.8 DraftKings points, 0.79 FanDuel points, which in Nicholas Batum's case is okay. I don't have a huge issue with that. 13% usage. I mean, the numbers are not going to be all that impressive, but you already knew that.
By the way, I have him projected for 0.82 fantasy points today.
Okay, that's fine. And this, again, is against the Minnesota Timberwolves. So
correct.
There is a legitimate blowout risk in this one. I'm very much willing to admit that, but it's going to be tough to base decisions off of that. As far as minutes go, his have been all over the place. But a lot of that, much of that has been the result of blowouts. The Cleveland game, blowout win, won by 26 against Orlando. He only played 28 minutes. So I don't see why he wouldn't get into the 30s today. I guess the big question is, why did he only play 27 minutes last game? But I think based on what we've seen from him this season, he's averaging just shy of 30 minutes. There is no Paul George today, and he's seen big minutes in competitive games recently. So in the event that this does somewhat happen to stay close, yeah, I think you could give Batum north of 30 minutes.
Yeah, if he plays north of 30 minutes, I love it. So the last game, he played all the normal rotations, started the first, closed the second, started the third, closed the fourth, just didn't come in ultra early in that final rotation. But I can't really read into anything. They just sort of trimmed up the rotations a little bit. So I don't really know how to read into it. His minutes have been bouncing all around the place. I'm going to give him 31, and at that point, or 33 rather. And at that point, I still think he's a fantastic play at low ownership. Just another guy that you can get to in a large field GPP.
Sure. And the thing with Batum is you need the minutes.
Yeah.
He's not going to.
He's the opposite of Chris Boucher.
Exactly. Exactly. So Nicholas Batum gives you 33 plus minutes. There's definitely some upside there. If he comes out and gives you another 24 and they blow the doors off Minnesota and he doesn't come back after his shortened rotation in the third quarter, you're very likely going to be in some trouble. So there's some risk there, but he is inexpensive and he's facing a terrible Minnesota team.
Absolutely. And by the way, from Minnesota, we didn't really talk about it. No one is getting any real ownership, nor should they. If D'Angelo Russell ends up out, we'll probably end up with a little bit of value coming from Minnesota, but I don't have a ton of interest in getting to anything from Minnesota. And they are very, very minimally owned.
Yeah. I mean, the highest projected owned player is Jared Vanderbilt on DraftKings.
Yeah, that says a lot.
Yeah. At 4,100, I don't think it's absurd that if you actually ended up with a little bit of him, but the minutes are considerably down from where they were just a couple of weeks ago, where he was getting at least 25 minutes per game. Now you're lucky to get 20 out of him. He's played less than 20 in 3 of his last 5. That's probably another pretty significant stay away spot. So
yes, it is.
New Orleans and Chicago. Let's keep this one going. We've got the Chicago Bulls. 3-point dogs at home, 230.5 total. Another 230 plus point game. We got 4 of them today. Again, a lot of high scoring games. We'll start it off with the Pels, who I think, first of all, you and I talk about this a lot now and talked about it yesterday, playing a second of a back-to-back, but they've just got a lot of guys here that are going to make it difficult to feel great about any of them because there are a lot of mouths to feed. And we have Josh Hart now coming off a strong game with the highest projected ownership on DraftKings. Guillermo, you may know him as Willie, Hernan Gomez, also getting around 10%, but none of the big guns getting any ownership once again.
No, and I think that's fine. I have Zion. Well, technically speaking, I have Eric Bledsoe on FanDuel at 5,100 as the best play coming from the Pels. Ownership is already higher than the mark I have him on, so I'm not even all that interested. You know, if you want to get to Steven Adams or Brandon Ingram or Zion, those are guys that are always going to show up as fine. I don't see a ton of value coming out of anything from New Orleans. I'm certainly not chasing the Josh Hart game from last night. Don't expect him to play 40 minutes again tonight, oddly enough. So I have him in for 25. That's fine. If he plays a little bit more, great. But I find New Orleans to be pretty uneventful. Everybody's just sort of priced where they should be.
Man, Zion, another patented 38 fantasy point game yesterday, but he did only play 21 minutes, Josh.
I mean, that's pretty damn good.
That's pretty good. They won by 29 points. That game was never competitive. Maybe after all the shit I talked, and it wasn't really shit talking, it was more just truth, facts. Maybe this was about to be the game where Zion was going to pop off 38 in 21 minutes. So really, that's almost 2 fantasy points per minute.
I mean, you already know it. I love that dude. He's the best player on the team. It's not even particularly close to me. I'm really anxious to see what he ends up looking like down the line. It all comes down to defense for him. I'm curious to see how he grows, but not a great DFS guy, but fun as hell to watch from a real life perspective.
You know, we still have a bet going.
I know that's the ass tattoo, correct?
Yes. What was the bet? First team.
I don't remember.
First team All Pro.
No, it couldn't have been first team All. I think you said he wouldn't make any All NBA teams.
All NBA. So I was thinking.
I wouldn't have bet an ass tattoo on first team. That's really aggressive.
We're gonna have to go back and look. because I wouldn't have bet All-Star. I definitely
No,
wouldn't
neither would
bet
I.
All-Star.
I mean, he'll make All-Star games even when he shouldn't.
Exactly. So that's not something I'll bet. I remember you saying it'll happen like within a couple of years, and I said there's no chance. And whoever lost would get an ass tattoo.
I think it might have been
face.
first or second team. I think we agreed to not include third team.
Is that what it was?
That sounds right to me. We're never going to find it, so it's probably not going to matter.
There's probably someone that'll watch this that will remember. I guarantee our viewers always come through in the clutch. Like, so we're gonna get a tweet at some point today. Hey, it was this. I remember, because our memories are shot. So, if you remember, let us know.
Oh man, fun stuff.
By the way, hit that thumbs up, guys, if you haven't done so yet. I think I forgot to mention that earlier, Josh. What am I doing?
Being worse at your job than I am.
Subscribe.
You're not asking for likes. You're giving reads for the wrong sponsors.
It's been a rough week, man. It's been a rough week.
I'll let them know on the back end to switch our names in the show host analyst spot.
Hit that subscribe button as well. It helps us a ton. Look, the reason we ask for thumbs up and subscriptions is because that algorithm here at YouTube, you got to combat it. It's an everyday battle. And we're doing our best to keep ourselves at the top, which we've worked so hard to get to, because, when you got the best free content out there, hopefully people stick around. Anything for Chicago, because Zach LaVine's in that same neighborhood in salary as Bradley Beal, as Kyrie Irving. He's right there in that low 9K range.
Well, on FanDuel, we're doing it all again from 2 days ago. LaVine's 9,300 on FanDuel, 9K on DraftKings. I think he looks good. Clearly, monster ceiling coming out of Zach LaVine. Ownership is there, but I don't think it's a problem. Going to be one of the guys I have a bunch of. Then we need to get into Patrick Williams and Denzel Valentine. So they're 5,500 and 5,300 respectively on DK. Solid values. They're seeing extra minutes with Otto Porter out, with Markkanen out, with Wendell Carter Jr. out. They didn't get priced up on FanDuel. Patrick Williams is still 4,400. He played the stupid amount of minutes on Monday night. He played 35 and a half minutes on Monday. Denzel Valentine, also still 4,400. Patrick Williams is projected for 34% ownership today, so he's chalk again. Denzel Valentine is projected for 25% ownership. He's chalk again. I think they're a little over chalky as far as I'm concerned, but they're still some of the best dollar for dollar plays on FanDuel tonight. Probably two guys you have to put directly into a cash lineup. I'm going to be getting to this Bulls team once again, but it's LaVine, Williams, Valentine, and Kobe White for me. And for the however many straight shows that I have to do it, I won't be playing Thaddeus Young at 6,900. Yep.
Cheetah says, need to hear from Laffy today. If he says the Mavs pick and roll D is going to be a problem for Trey, it was Charlotte's pick and roll defense for Trey and for Luka. And that was Adam who brought up a good point about that, but also was very clear that that is not the be all and end all. It was just, one aspect of research that they shut Trey down in back-to-back games. They stopped Luka. And then the next time Luka played him, he went off. So, that is just the way it is, but no, it's not, as far as I've seen, it's not Atlanta's defense right now. Anything else for the Bulls?
No, I don't think so. It's pretty much just those four guys: LaVine, Williams, Valentine, White. Guys like Satoransky or Temple could fall into some extra minutes, but I don't think that I need to go to those guys on a 9-game slate. They'd be more in line for like a smaller slate.
All right. No House Advantage. You heard about it earlier in the show. Sponsor of the NBA Strategy Show. They are taking an entirely different spin on daily fantasy sports with peer-to-peer prop bets. It's a pretty wonderful thing. And the best part about all of it, there are two best parts to playing at No House Advantage. Okay. One, it's an entirely different game. You're doing prop bets by confidence intervals. Instead of like DraftKings and FanDuel sportsbooks where you can only bet one at a time, you actually throw them into contest form. So the one you're most confident in, you put at the top and onward, all the way down in a GPP style format. But you also get $20 when matched on your deposit when you use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, which is great. And one more thing, I think this might actually be the best part, Josh, because all of the projections for No House Advantage, built by Alex Baker, taking all of the props on the site and comparing them to his projections, they're entirely free at awesemo.com. So like you're already starting off on the right foot with your $20 in free projections. You're way ahead of the game.
Yeah, way ahead of the game. You're getting, I mean, like, I don't want to say spoon fed because that makes it sound like unappealing, but it's very valuable information that doesn't really exist in this industry anywhere. If you want to tackle no house advantage, we are giving you all of the tools to do so at a very high level.
Yep. Oh, and one more thing that Ben brings up all the time. These props are static. They don't change. They're not, you're not going to see a prop come out in the morning and then, as it would on maybe DraftKings or FanDuel, getting hammered hard in one direction, drop or rise, and then, and then you're hitting that. What you're seeing is these bets that come out in the morning or maybe the night before, they don't change at all. So for one reason or another, you could be getting just absolute a great edge over anyone else who isn't paying attention, who isn't playing the same game, who isn't using the free projections. So use that promo code Awesemo, go to No House Advantage, or download it in the App Store today. All right, Josh, what do we got? 3 left? Because I think we're actually doing pretty decent as far as time goes.
I mean, we're good to go. I have no concept. You go in a different order than I do, so I never have any idea what's next.
We got 3 games. I go in the DraftKings order.
Okay. I don't ever open that at all.
Sure. Well, DraftKings just goes by time. But the one you use goes by time, but it probably mixes up. Like if there's 3 at 7:30, they get mixed up.
Yeah. I mean, I go by time as well, but the 3 games at 8 are random as far as I'm concerned. I do them in alphabetical order of home team.
Oh, okay.
At each time. So like at 8 o'clock, it went Hornets, Pacers, Clippers. That could be anything on DK.
It certainly could. So could this,
Actually, I go by alphabetical order of road team, I guess.
It's very unimportant.
That's stupid.
Very unimportant. Cleveland and Denver. The Cleveland Cavs on the road, 9.5 point dogs, 219 total. This is one of the lowest totals of the game. Actually, all of these night games outside of one of them are kind of on the surface, but then you got some injuries thrown in, some cheap players, and it's going to make some popular options as we see so often. And we'll get to OKC in just a second. But if we start with Cleveland, Josh, no ownership here outside of, it's seemingly some sprinkles of Andre Drummond, Darius Garland, and Colin Sexton, which seems to be the case every single night because you like the ceiling on Drummond, but it's a volatile spot for him.
We have a lot to talk about here. So one, you said sprinkles in ownership. Definitely didn't look at the FanDuel table where Andre Drummond is 28% owned.
Yeah,
Colin
referring
Sexton,
to DraftKings at 8,300. Yes.
Colin Sexton, 18% owned. On DK, I think a bunch of these guys are going under owned, actually. We need to have a bigger conversation about Andre Drummond and Jared Allen. So they started Jared Allen in their last game alongside Andre Drummond,
yep. But
they didn't stagger them either. Nobody picked up that extra rotation in the middle. So they played beginning of the first, end of the second, beginning of the third, and a weirder rotation later on in the game. But they are just literally playing them next to each other like Jared Allen is a power forward. I have no idea if that's going to happen again. But for now, I've got Andre Drummond at 30 minutes, Jared Allen at 28 minutes. Happy to get to both of them. Drummond probably a little bit over-owned on FanDuel, but still looks pretty good. And then on DK, I think all these guys are just mildly under-owned. No problem getting to Sexton, Allen, Garland. So get yourself some Sexland backcourt. Even Isaac Okoro at 3,300. There's not a lot to pay down for on DK today. That's value at north of 30 minutes. They could yank this rotation all over the place, and I would not be surprised. I have no idea where Cleveland goes from here because it's really just not the way that these things fit together all that well. So it's Drummond and Sexton for me on FanDuel, and then any one of those main 5 guys from Cleveland look to be a little bit under-owned on DK.
Yeah, so Drummond and Allen played 30 minutes alongside of each other last game. 30 minutes. You talk about not staggering them. It's pretty significant because Allen played 34 minutes. Drummond played around 36 total. Drummond had 1.22 DraftKings points per minute, 0.68 for Allen. It's, of course, a very small sample size, but on the rebounding front, Jared Allen rebounding took a hit. No surprise there. Drummond still at 25%. And I think the one argument you could make in favor of Drummond always is, Josh, unless it's like Joel Embiid or Rudy Gobert that you're playing alongside of him, you're just not going to steal rebounds from him. Like I don't look at another center, and Jared Allen's not exactly a 7'1" big man. I just don't look at anyone and say, man, that's really going to hurt Drummond at this point because he's a monster on the boards, and you'd be silly to assume that one of those guys could take rebounds away from him.
Yeah, I think it's just going to have a negative effect on both of those guys. It's really just going to depend on price and where their minutes end up lining up.
Sure. I'm not saying it helps him, but I'm saying it might be overblown looking at someone like that and saying, man, that really hurts him. I don't think it hurts him on a rebounding front. Jared Allen's not a particularly, not a high usage player at all.
I was saying it the opposite way. I think it hurts Jared Allen.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh yeah. I was speaking specifically to Andre Drummond, saying like, this is not someone that I'm really worried is going to get crushed in that respect because Jared Allen's on the floor alongside him. I wish he wasn't. I would be a lot happier if it was, Chetty Osman playing the 4, but I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. Well, I'd be a lot happier if it was Jared Allen playing the 5 and Andre Drummond being the starting center for insert crap team here.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be fun? Bring him over to Minnesota. Let him put in some work.
I think they've got a center that's slightly better when he's on the floor, at least.
Yeah. If he ever is again.
Well, yeah. Gotta get that lung capacity up, bro.
Yeah. Look, it's sad. It's pretty awful actually, but he's been out for a long time now. So
yeah,
I don't know. They're not going anywhere. Maybe cut the cord on the season and just say, sit this one out, pal. They won't.
Well, they don't. You know why they won't? Because they don't have their pick.
Yeah, I know. Well, they got Anthony Edwards.
Lucky them.
That's
exciting. Glad they didn't take LaMelo Ball. That wouldn't have been a good idea.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Morons.
What are you doing with the Denver Nuggets? Nikola Jokic just been absolutely dominant. I did a 2021 sports futures show on Sirius XM yesterday. It was like a 2-hour sports futures show, which is pretty fun. Talking finals voting or finals bets, the awards for MVP, 6-man, Super Bowl 2021, all that good, or 2022, all that good stuff. And I just find it remarkable that Embiid and Jokic are both 2 and 3 in MVP odds right now behind LeBron James. Jokic has been amazing. He's coming off a 50-pointer and then a 35-point game.
He does literally everything in their offense. He's their best all-around offensive player. I mean, you could probably make a case that he's like the most versatile offensive player in basketball, given the amount of different things that he can do at his size. It's crazy. With that said, 11-1 on FanDuel, 11K on DraftKings. Just tough to pay that entire salary. Doesn't look bad or anything. He's pretty heavily owned on FanDuel, to be honest, but I don't need to go there aggressively. Jokic, Murray, Porter, and Barton all look really, really similar to me relative to salary. These are guys I want to have about 10% of. And it's sort of the same scenario on DraftKings. They're just not a team that I want to get like heavy on. I think they're just fine.
I'm assuming that we see Drummond and Jared Allen start in the front court again.
Yeah.
Because in that last game, I mean, I guess it was because Frank Kaminsky was in the starting lineup too. But do you think we see the same starting lineup? I asked just so we can, look at Denver and maybe figure out what that lineup look or what minutes look like there. But probably doesn't make a difference. I doubt you're going to play to Cleveland's hand regardless,
I would give anything to be able to stop talking about Andre Drummond. Chat keeps trying to send him to other teams. He's not going to those teams. He's not as good as you think he is. It's just a terrible conversation. It's driving me absolutely bonkers.
Well, he is as good as you think he is for DFS, but in real life basketball, no.
I've already had this conversation today on the Process Show. Like, I can't get rid of this dude. It's awful. Awful.
Do you agree with Jokic's ownership?
Not on FanDuel. It's too high. On DraftKings, I think it's fine. Yeah. I do think that Allen and Drummond start alongside each other again.
I do too. 8.5% on DraftKings. I don't know. It seems pretty low to me. Anything else in this game before we move on?
Nah.
OKC, LA Lakers. Here we go once again. The Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm tired of talking about the Thunder, Josh, because it's just a bunch of not very good players that are getting extraordinary ownership. And I hate to say it, but it's warranted. Isaiah Roby on DraftKings. 58% projected ownership right now. How about this? Let me do this for you. If you were to take everyone on this slate, everyone, the top 3 highest projected owned players are all on OKC, and 4 of the top 6 are all on OKC. It's absurd.
I don't even know what to say anymore. Play everybody aggressively other than Darius Miller and maybe Justin Jackson. Isaiah Roby's the best play on the slate. He's 58% owned on FanDuel or on DraftKings. He's not as highly owned on FanDuel because of the way the positions work, but Diallo, Horford, Bazley, Roby, Dort, these are 25 to 30% guys. You have to have a ton of Oklahoma City. There's no way around it. It doesn't matter if they get blown out at all because they have to fill these minutes one way or the other. It's the best spot on the slate.
Yeah, and let me back up for 1 second here. So they're missing Gilgeous-Alexander. They're missing Teo Maledon. They're missing Mike Muscala. George Hill obviously remains out. So, and Trevor Ariza hasn't played this season. They continue to update the news on him too, which is frustrating. I guess he's coming back at some point soon. But yeah. So SGA, Maledon, Muscala, George Hill. Let's go ahead and just take a look at what we expect these minutes to be this season or tonight, Josh. And I know you have them right in front of you.
I do. I mean, I've got Diallo at 35, Horford at 30, Bazley at 36, Roby at 30, Dort at 32, Kenrich Williams at 31, Justin Jackson at 28, Darius Miller at 18. Clearly, some of that stuff can wiggle around, but it's really hard to not play someone a bunch of minutes because then they're just out of players. They don't have other options. Everyone has to play, 3 or 4 pretty legitimate rotations, no matter what.
Horford's played 35 minutes without SGA, George Hill, Muscala, and Teo Maledon.
What's that usage rate at?
You saw this?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, 1.92 DraftKings points per minute, totally sustainable. And a usage rate of 38%. So, yeah, lock it up.
I can't project him there. I just sort of like picked a number in the high 20s. I don't know what else to do. Right.
You're not, You're not giving him 2 fantasy points per minute. But no, I honestly do think that Al Horford it sucks that I wish he would have had power forward eligibility. Not that he should, but because sometimes DraftKings just kind of does that, right?
Yeah.
That would be awesome because then Horford would be even more appealing. But he came off a banger just a couple of days ago against none other than Minnesota with 57 fantasy points. And he flirted with a triple-double. He had 5 stocks. Horford, when put in a situation that he's somewhat running an offense, actually isn't bad. So
yeah,
I think there's plenty of appeal there, and just the rest of these guys without all of those aforementioned players on the floor. Bazley in 31 minutes, 1.17 DraftKings points per minute. Roby at 1.13. Justin Jackson north of a fantasy point per minute. Hamidou Diallo at 1.04. Granted, just very small samples, Josh, but they're going to all have to do a lot. And I think they're going to play enough minutes to where you don't have to worry about how many mouths there are to feed.
Without question. The only guy that a blowout affects is Al Horford. He's not going to play in a blowout.
Nope.
So it's filling with 7 guys instead.
He only played 29 minutes in that huge game that he had, but then he played 34 minutes against the Lakers, although that was an overtime game. So I'm assuming he played all 5 in overtime, right?
Because I would imagine.
Horford played, almost all of overtime. So that means you're pretty much projecting him for 29 minutes today.
I gave him 30. And it's just, you got to play all of these guys. I don't have anything to add. Darius Bazley is oddly low owned today. I think that's nuts. But when push comes to shove, I'm just going to have infinite amounts of most of Oklahoma City.
All right. Talk to me a little bit about the Lakers then. If we were to assume, and you mentioned it earlier in the show, that you think we could see no Anthony Davis today. LeBron James is 1.5 fantasy point per minute guy without Davis on the floor. No one else has really taken that next step. Like Taylor Horton Tucker is around 0.98, Montrezl Harrell around 0.98, Kyle Kuzma 0.97 without Anthony Davis. They're all in that exact same neighborhood. Dennis Schroeder 0.89. They're all between like 0.9 and 1 fantasy point per minute outside of LeBron James.
Yeah, it's nothing really changes in the case of him being out. It's just really not going to matter. I don't understand why they would bring him back in this one. They're going to be massive favorites regardless. This is such a shorthanded team. This just doesn't seem like a spot where you bring him back. I talked about this a little bit on the Process show today, and I want to touch on it again here. I want to make sure that we get this information out. I was listening to the Dunked On podcast yesterday, Nate Dunk and Danny LaRue, and they pointed out something that I thought was really interesting. Anthony Davis's injury that is listed and reported from the Lakers is right Achilles tendinosis, not tendinitis. So tendinitis would be more like acute swelling, something that you expect to go away. Tendinosis is going to be something that he is likely to be dealing with regularly and moving forward, something that is probably going to be problematic, not just now, but for a while. And I think that's a really interesting distinction. If this were just a tendinitis problem, I would be a lot less worried about Anthony Davis's long-term future, at least for the rest of this year. I think we can see him missing a lot more time than we normally would, given that injury distinction. It's kind of problematic. I have him in right now because that's just the way that I do these things. I just assumed that he would be quote unquote back, but just thinking this game out loud, it doesn't make a ton of sense to me for Anthony Davis to play. So you would get to a little bit more LeBron James, but at the same time, I don't really think that I would be all that interested in much else. Probably a bit of a boost to Kyle Kuzma, but not like a smash play. A little bit of a boost to Talen Horton-Tucker, but again, not a guy that I'm going to be getting a lot of. I don't really roster that much of the Lakers, and that I'm fine with.
Thought you were going to tell me something I didn't already know. Everyone knows the difference between tendinitis and tendinosis.
That's pretty good, right?
I had no idea there was a difference there. Good stuff. It's not impressive that you learned something and were able to regurgitate it, but it was that you regurgitated it so succinctly. Like you seem to remember all of it.
Well, I thought I made sure to like bookmark it in my brain that, that could be a more degenerative issue for AD at this point. So that's what makes me think that he's way less likely to play today than at all. But, whenever I try to guess injuries, I'm wrong. So it doesn't matter.
Are you giving Markieff, how many minutes are you giving Markieff Morris?
Well, I have AD in right now, so 0.
Okay. Okay.
If AD is out like I'm expecting, 20 probably.
Yeah, he played 26 last game and no overtime run. So
I don't have any concept of what the end of that game looked like yesterday. So
2 days ago?
Or 2 days ago, rather. Let me pull that up.
So
obviously this was against Oklahoma City.
Wesley Matthews closed the game and played all of overtime with Harrell, LeBron, Schroeder, and Caldwell Pope.
Yeah, I think probably 22, 23 minutes for Markieff Morris probably ends up looking pretty good at that point in time as a value option.
Kuzma only played 23 minutes there too.
Yeah, that's pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, I thought so as well.
No foul issues either. So
nope, and that was all in regulation. It wasn't like he didn't play hardly at all in the fourth quarter. Wesley Matthews played 21 minutes before overtime, and Montrezl Harrell played 25 minutes before overtime. So that's the one thing that kind of sucks here is that there's just no one that's going to pull the bulk of minutes from Anthony Davis being out. Yeah. But if you were to get 25 from Markieff Morris, once again in the starting lineup, there's definitely an argument to be made, Josh. He is a minimum salary on DraftKings. Understandably, he was not good last game. I totally understand that. But 26 minutes is at least worth pointing out if you're willing to play the likes of Sterling Brown and Frank Mason, and Gary Clark and James Ennis.
I mean, even at 20 minutes, if AD is out and we find any information on Markieff Morris, the flat minimum salary is going to bring him in play as a value option on DraftKings
for sure,
without question.
Yep. Anything else here?
Nah, I don't think so. Just play a lot of Oklahoma City and keep your eye on the news.
Let's wrap it up. And by the way, guys, like we said, if you are new to Awesemo, first of all, welcome. But all of our projections, the ownership projections that you hear us reference so often, they're gold in the fantasy arena. The boom bust tool, the top stack tool, which I absolutely love for football, baseball. It's so valuable. Top plays tool, even for teams or sports that don't have stacks, whether it's golf, showdown. We've got the top plays tool taking the probabilities that they're going to be the number one score. They're going to be the 2 through 6, just everything to make you a better player. All of it at awesemo.com/join. And the great thing is we got something for everyone, whether it's a weekly express pass for less than $4 a week, or you want to go all out with an all-access Awesemo Plus Platinum Annual, every single sport included for the entire calendar year. You can do single sport for the year. You can do monthly, weekly, whatever you want, we've got it. And look, all the tools are built by Alex Awesemo himself, #1 ranked player. That's why, we always feel confident saying you come here and you're going to learn something and you're going to love these tools. Just check out the screenshots as well coming into to Twitter. There've been a lot of them recently. We got another one yesterday, and we had a premium sub just hit us up earlier in this show, Josh. He took down 3K yesterday as well on a $4 entry. So I just get excited when I see that stuff, people using our tools and having success.
You know what I get excited about? Seeing that you've been so bad at asking for likes that I had more on a process show that started at 6:30 in the morning.
Well, I got bigger fish to fry, fella.
Yeah, whatever.
Bigger fish to fry.
People know who's good at this and who's not at this
point. They just do it to shut you up, though. That's all. They're like, can you get on with it? And I guess it works. I'll give you that. But
I mean, based on everything that I'm seeing, people want more of Josh Engleman, not to shut me up.
Yeah, it's possible. No.
They're getting more. I'm on Live Before Lock tonight, too. Tune in at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Just shut up your like asking.
That's fair.
I don't know. When it comes to 50,000 subscribers, I've been told that I got almost single-handedly the remaining 10,000.
All right. Well, I got the first 40.
That is not true.
It's more true than false.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there were at least, I'd say every, couple of years ago, at least 7 to 15 people watching those streams. So yeah, I mean, it's 7, 15. You ready to close this out?
Let's do it.
By the way, I went back and watched the first video ever posted on Awesemo. I wasn't here. And you've always put out some pretty decent content, even when the production value is like, man. And you had some wild, like, porn sounds in your intro song.
I had a viewer make me an intro back in the day, long before we had one. There was like animations and stuff for it, but we pulled that because it was more like joshengleman.com stuff for Awesemo. But I kept the music for the intro track. But yeah, it's a woman's like, I mean, like in a better way than I just did.
Yeah, do that again.
No, I'm good. We can just play that one back. That's going on the
soundboard, up, though, guys. I'm taking on fire here. So show a little support. But I would assume we got almost 800 watching, which is awesome, by the way. And it makes me feel good to have 800 watching on a morning strategy show where we talk basketball and bullshit.
I only had 250 on my process show and yet still had more likes than what you were able to pull. Just pointing that out. I almost had like a 90% ratio.
Yeah, but here's the difference. And you will agree with this. You don't want to. You won't want to, but you will agree. Anyone tuning in for the process show is a diehard, okay? And they are 100% certain. It's a 100% likelihood. It's a guarantee that they will hit that thumbs up button.
Pretty true, yeah.
You know what I mean? It happened. Yeah. Like, we have some less popular shows where there's 50 people watching it or 100 people watching an NFL show on a Tuesday. All of those people, they're diehard awesome, ride or die Awesemo, and we love them.
I like it. You're right. I don't want to give you credit, but you're right.
But I still am impressed by what you've done at 6:30 in the morning, and it's an awesome show. Check it out. The Process Show every morning, 6:30 Eastern time. That's how you host the show. Milwaukee, Phoenix. Let's close this one out. Last one. We've got the Milwaukee Bucks on the road, West Coast road trip here, 5.5 point favorites, 226 total. What are your thoughts on Giannis?
Indifferent, I guess. 10-9 on FanDuel, 10-6 on DK. Tough matchup against Phoenix. Solid team, slow pace because of Chris Paul. If Chris Paul is out, it actually makes me like Giannis a little bit more. He's picking up ownership. He's around 10% average on both sites, and I think that's about where he should be. I like him a little bit less on DraftKings than I do on FanDuel. He looks good. I'm happy. I would rather get to Chris Middleton over Giannis on both sites, 7,600 and 7,900. I think the price tag just works a little bit better. And then Dante DiVincenzo with no Drew Holiday for the next couple games. DiVincenzo's 4,700 on FanDuel, 5,200 on DK. I prefer him on FanDuel, but the ownership is already there. He's 16% owned. It's just not a spot where I'm going to be getting a lot of volume from Milwaukee. Not really getting a lot of volume from Phoenix either. This one's an easy one to close out.
Okay. Who would you say is I guess you might not have one, but if you were to take a top play from this game, one of the late night hammers, Pat Connaughton. Like, you look at Pat Connaughton, he's getting some ownership. Not sure how long that lasts throughout the day. Chris Middleton, DJ Augustine, these guys are all getting a little bit here, but kind of just not significant, Josh. And so much of this is just due to the fact that they're very, very cheap without a ton of value currently on this slate and Drew Holiday being sidelined.
Yeah, favorite play on FanDuel is Giannis. Favorite play on DraftKings is Chris Middleton.
How do you, okay, we'll close with this.
Sure.
How do you see Drew Holiday's absence being played out here in the rotation today?
It's meaningless, basically. It's so weird.
Because we do have one game. We do have one game with him out on the 8th. Drew Holiday did not play. They actually went ahead pretty late, but all of the starters got most of their minutes. If you look at Popcorn Machine, though, there is nothing more frustrating than seeing Mike Budenholzer's rotations. They're all over the other. It looks like a sideways game of Tetris.
Yeah, it's just dots all over the place of guys coming on and guys coming
Horrible.
off. Like Bryn Forbes started. If he plays 26 minutes, he sucks because he's Bryn Forbes. I thought DJ Augustine might get more minutes. He didn't. All these guys just end up playing like 18 to 23 minutes and being wildly uninteresting.
It's horrible. Torrey
Giannis,
Craig.
Middleton, Lopez, DiVincenzo. They're the only guys that are going to play like legit minutes. And Forbes might, but he's a vacuum of DFS talent.
Outside of Jalen Adams, who played half a minute at the end of a game that was over, like they were up by 13 points. Torrey Craig played 23. Bobby Portis played 20. DJ Augustine played 21. Pat Connaughton played 21. That is your bench. You're getting 20 to 22 minutes, 20 to 23 minutes from all of those guys, which completely caps their upside and makes it so even losing someone like Drew Holiday, a talented player, the third best player on that team, there's nothing you can really take from that. So kind of sucks.
It really does. Yeah. You would think it'd open up value. It doesn't really, as far as I'm concerned.
Last thing here, Paul George, questionable to play. Chris Paul, questionable to play.
Yeah.
If he ends up being out, what do we do here? Does that open anything up significantly? Because Cameron Payne has also been out. Abdel Nader is out. Jay Crowder, is questionable. Would that give us any value here?
Well, if you're trying to roster Jets wide receivers today, it's probably not going to work out all that much for you.
I corrected myself.
That's just true. I like Devin Booker, whether Chris Paul plays or not. If Chris Paul doesn't play, Devin Booker is going to be one of the more popular swaps if you can get to him. That's for sure. Cam Johnson probably gets a little bit of a boost. Etuan Moore, if Chris Paul is out, is a guy that you probably have to look to, although he is not going to be like a really fun guy to roster. He's 3,800 on FanDuel at the very least. I just don't have much interest in Phoenix at all. Chris Paul being out is the only piece that's going to make that interesting. And if we don't get that news before lock, you're probably not even going to be able to swap into all that much Phoenix to begin with.
Even Devin Booker.
I mean, I would want to get to a lot of Devin Booker if I could. I just don't know how easily that I'm going to be able to do that at 10 o'clock once 7 of the games have already locked.
Yeah, you're right. Unless we get some news earlier. You're right. 33% usage, 1.18 fantasy points per minute without Chris Paul on the floor this year.
Yeah, like you're going to need, like Devin Booker should probably be like 25% owned if Chris Paul is out. I just don't think that we get that news before 7 o'clock. If we do, great. But that'll all change. Keep your eyes peeled on live before lock. But if it comes out after 7 o'clock, you're going to have a hard time getting to a lot of Devin Booker. You're just going to run out of spots.
I would say this. If you have any Chris Middleton, you could have some contingency plans there because Middleton has guard eligibility. You can put him in guard or utility and leave $200 on the table. That's one way to do it. I know that's tough, but especially given that he's not a particularly great option here. But aside from that, there really aren't that many alternatives. But you're right. Devin Booker might be actually, if you could figure a way to do it, Devin Booker could be a pretty solid option against a fast-paced Milwaukee team. They're not huge favorites either. It's just how do you do it if you're not getting that news until 9:30?
You'll likely have a bunch of exposure from Oklahoma City. So you will be able to like shuffle the chairs a little bit, but it might be a situation where like your entire lineup construction changes just because of it. So keep that in mind. If you can get to him, you should get to him.
And that's exactly why you guys should be tuning into the NBA Late Slate Show, calling it the Late Slate Swap and Sweat Show. It sounds like a porno. Like it sounds like you're going to tune into something and see something that you only look at when your wife's not in your office. You know what I mean? But it's not. It is a DFS show, and it's pretty awesome. Tonight, you've got, who do we have with us tonight? We've got Greg and Eric taking you all the way up to lock. So they're going to break down the entire 2-game late slate, They're going to talk about late swap options. They're going to sweat whatever lineups they have. Hang out. It's a fun atmosphere. You'll learn something along the way. Get your plays in. Get the strategy and lineup building and a lot of other stuff. Hopefully nothing crazy happens given the name of that show. And be sure to stick around through. What's that?
I just agreed with you is all.
I'd be happy to stick around. You've got the tip-off coming up. It's the new show right before the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. But before that, the NHL Strategy Show. I think we had the NHL Strategy Show. Maybe not. Now we got the Daily Game Plan. That is premium. Alex Baker doing that today. And I guess, what is there, no hockey today, Josh? I don't know.
I don't know, man. I don't pay attention to hockey.
We got PGA Live Before Lock, though. That's a fun one, 7:45 p.m. We got
MMA Strategy, too, I assume.
Yeah, and you did a PGA betting show with Ben today, huh?
I certainly did. Check that one out. It should be up later today.
Check it out. Guys, thanks for hanging out. As always, we love you all. Hit that thumbs up before you go. Subscribe to the channel. We will be back here with you tomorrow on the NBA Strategy Show presented by No House Advantage.